The airport lounge was completely silent as my sister stared at the boarding passes in my hand, her face turning a deep, humiliated shade of red. Just 2 days ago, she had smirked right to my face and said, "You sorry? But this is a private family vacation, and there just isn't room for your kids." She thought she was teaching me a lesson, leaving my children crying on the living room floor while her own kids bragged about the luxury resort they were visiting. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly fathom, was that I had already spent the last 24 hours making a few phone calls of my own. I didn't just book a backup plan, I booked a multi-million-dollar upgrade they couldn't touch. Follow my story until the end, and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my voice has reached. Because the look on her face when she realized who actually owned their private villa, it was absolutely priceless. My name is Chloe, and at 28 years old, I finally learned that blood doesn't always mean family. For as long as I can remember, my older sister, Vanessa, was the undisputed golden child of our family. She was the one who married rich, lived in a sprawling mansion, and viewed the rest of us, especially me, as nothing more than background characters in her perfect life. I work a demanding job as a graphic designer, pouring my heart into every project just to build a comfortable, stable life for my 2 beautiful kids, Leo and Mia. Unlike Vanessa, I don't have a wealthy husband or a trust fund to fall back on, but my home is filled with genuine love, laughter, and warmth. A few months ago, our parents announced that they wanted to organize a massive, all-inclusive, extended family vacation to a luxury tropical resort. It was supposed to be a celebration of family unity, a chance for all the cousins to bond and make lifelong memories together. When my kids heard about the pristine white beaches, the massive water parks, and the private villas, their eyes completely lit up. For weeks, Leo and Mia kept a countdown calendar on the kitchen fridge, crossing off the days with bright red markers. They even packed their small suitcases a month in advance, talking endlessly about swimming with their cousins. I smiled, genuinely believing that for once, our family was going to stand together. But I had severely underestimated just how cruel Vanessa could truly be. The departure date was just a week away when my parents called a casual family dinner at their house to finalize the flight details and packing lists. Leo and Mia were practically vibrating with excitement, clutching their little backpacks tightly as we walked through the front door. We sat down at the dining room table, surrounded by maps of the resort and colorful brochures. But the moment Vanessa strutted into the room, the air grew instantly heavy. She didn't look at my kids. She just set her designer purse down with a sharp, deliberate thud. Before I could even open my mouth to ask about the flight itinerary, Vanessa reached into a folder, pulled out a stack of printed boarding passes, and began distributing them around the table. She handed them to my parents, her husband, and her own children. When she reached me, her hands remained completely empty. I frowned, looking at the table, then up at her. "Vanessa, where are the passes for me and the kids?" I asked, a strange, cold knot twisting in my stomach. Vanessa sighed heavily, a practiced theatrical sound dripping with synthetic sympathy. "Oh, Chloe, I'm so glad you brought it up. Look, there's been a bit of a scheduling issue. The resort contacted us, saying they overbooked the luxury villas, and our budget limits just couldn't handle adding extra rooms. This is really meant to be a private, immediate family vacation anyway, so there just isn't room for your kids this time." The room went entirely dead silent. I stared at her, my jaw dropping in absolute shock. I looked over at my parents, desperately waiting for them to say something, to defend their grandchildren, but they just stared down at their plates, completely silent, nodding along with Vanessa's blatant lies. Vanessa looked down at Leo and Mia, who were sitting right next to me, and gave a small, cruel smirk. "Don't worry, kid," she said smoothly. "We'll bring you back some souvenirs." My children's faces completely fell. "Oh, precious!" Within seconds, tears were streaming down Mia's cheeks, and Leo bit his lip, trying so hard to be brave, but failing miserably as the realization sank in. They had been completely cast out, humiliated in front of their entire family by the aunt they trusted. I didn't say another word. I stood up, gripped my sobbing children's hand, and walked right out of that house. As I drove us home through the dark, listening to the heartbreaking sound of my kids crying on the back seat, a furious, burning fire ignited in Vanessa thought she had successfully broken us, but she had absolutely no idea what she had just started. And by the time we got back home, the house felt entirely empty and silent, save for the muffled, heartbreaking sounds of Leo and Mia crying themselves to sleep in their bedrooms. I sat alone on the edge of my bed, the furious burning in my chest slowly morphing into cold, calculated determination. I refused to let my children spend their summer vacation feeling like they weren't good enough, or that they were secondary citizens in their own family. Vanessa wanted to play dirty, so it was time for me to find out exactly what kind of game we were playing. I pulled out my laptop, opened up the resort's official website, and began aggressively digging into their booking systems, trying to see if there was any possible way I could use my savings to book a separate standard room on the exact same dates. But as I scrolled down to the very bottom of the corporate information page, my eyes caught a familiar legal name listed under the parent corporation's board of directors. I rubbed my eyes, blinking in disbelief. The entire luxury resort chain wasn't owned by some faceless international conglomerate. It was a subsidiary of a massive hospitality group owned by my paternal godfather, Arthur Pendleton. Arthur was my late father's closest childhood friend and a wildly successful billionaire tycoon who had always treated me like his own biological daughter. Because of his busy international schedule, we hadn't spoken in a few months, but he had always told me that if I ever needed anything, I shouldn't hesitate to call. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight, but I knew Arthur was currently overseas on a business trip in London, and it was broad daylight for him. With my heart hammering against my ribs, I dialed his private number, praying he would pick up. Warned, the phone rang exactly twice before Arthur's warm, booming voice filled the line. "Chloe, my dear. It is so wonderful to hear from you," he said, sounding genuinely delighted. But the moment he heard the slight tremble in my voice, his tone shifted instantly into deep concern. I didn't hold anything back. I told him everything. How Vanessa had systematically cut my kids from the reservation at the very last minute, how she had humiliated them in front of the entire family, and how my parents had just sat there silently, letting it happen. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute, heavy, and dangerous. When Arthur finally spoke, his voice was pure, icy steel. "They did what?" he whispered, his corporate authority radiating through the phone. "Chloe, that resort belongs to my primary hospitality group. Give me exactly 10 minutes. He hung up before I could even reply. True to his word, my phone buzzed exactly 9 minutes later with an email notification that made my jaw drop. Arthur hadn't just fixed the issue, he had completely rewritten the script. He had personally intervened, flagged Vanessa's baseline booking, and entirely cancelled her standard reservations. In their place, he booked me and my children into the resort's ultra-exclusive, invite-only presidential megavilla, a multi-million-dollar private estate that wasn't even listed on the public website. The email confirmed everything was completely free of charge, fully comped by the executive office, and included round-the-clock private butler service, a personal chef, and absolute veto authority over the resort's premium amenities. Vanessa thought she was a VIP because she booked a standard suite, but Arthur had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. I closed my laptop, a slow smile finally spreading across my face. The trap was set. Meant the day of departure finally arrived, and the air at the airport was thick with anticipation. Vanessa, my parents, and the rest of the family were crowded near the economy check-in line, surrounded by piles of luggage. Vanessa was in her element, loudly complaining about the wait time while flashing her silver tier loyalty card like it was a royal badge of honor. She was in the middle of laughing at something her husband said when she suddenly went completely rigid. Her eyes widened in absolute disbelief as she spotted me, Leo, and Mia walking through the sliding glass doors. We weren't wearing the stressed, defeated expressions she expected. Instead, my kids were laughing, dressed in brand new travel gear, pulling sleek designer suitcases that Arthur had delivered to our house the day before. Vanessa practically tore herself away from the line, marching over to me with her arms tightly crossed and a look of pure fury on her face. "What on earth do you think you're doing here, Chloe?" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Are you seriously stalking us? I told you there is no room for your kids on this trip. Trying to ruin our family vacation." Before I could even open my mouth to respond, a tall man wearing a flawless 3D tie 3 custom-tailored navy suit stepped directly between us. He had a gold-embossed resort clipboard in his hand. He looked past Vanessa as if she were completely invisible, bowed politely to me, and smiled warmly. "Miss Chloe? Welcome. My name is Christian, and I'm your dedicated private estate concierge. Your first-class boarding passes are fully processed, and your private transport is waiting. If you and the children would please follow me, we will bypass security and escort you directly to the VIP lounge." Vanessa's jaw dropped so low, I thought it would hit the shiny terminal floor. She sputtered, her face turning an incredibly dark, humiliated shade of red as she looked from Christian's gold badge to the luxury passes in my hand. "Wait, there's been a mistake," she yelled out frantically. "I booked the rooms. Who is she?" But Christian didn't even turn around. He gently guided us past the velvet ropes, leaving Vanessa standing entirely alone in the crowded terminal, staring after us in absolute, utterly speechless shock. The flight was pure luxury. But the real show began the moment our private transport pulled up to the resort's grand entrance. As Leo and Mia marveled at the towering palm trees, I noticed Vanessa and the rest of the family arriving in a crowded shuttle bus, utterly exhausted. Vanessa immediately marched up to the front desk, ready to demand her usual royal treatment. I stood a few feet away, watching the drama unfold. The front desk agent looked at Vanessa's confirmation number, then winced uncomfortably. "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am, but due to a sudden corporate restructuring of our property assets, your reservations for the luxury suites have been systematically cancelled. We have relocated your party to our standard garden view rooms near the outer perimeter." Vanessa's face turned completely purple. "Are you insane?" she screamed, pounding her fist on the marble counter. "I paid premium prices for those suites. Who took them from me?" Just then, Christian, our concierge, stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Actually, ma'am, those suites were cleared to accommodate the executive party. If you have any complaints, you'll have to take them up with the owner's representative." He then turned to me with a deep bow. "Miss Chloe, your presidential mega villa is fully prepared. Your private chef is currently setting up lunch by your infinity pool." Vanessa spun around, her eyes bulging out of her head as she realized what was happening. She stormed over to me, her finger pointing wildly at my face. "You! How dare you do this to us? You stole our vacation!" But before she could step any closer, the resort's general manager stepped in, flanking Christian. "Ma'am, please step back," the manager said, his voice dropping into pure steel. "Miss Chloe holds the executive keys to this entire estate. One more outburst, and we will have security escort your entire family off the property permanently." Manda, the remainder of the vacation was pure, unadulterated bliss for my children. While Vanessa and the rest of the Enabler family members were forced to spend their trip cramped in the lowest tier, garden view rooms near the noisy resort parking lot, Leo and Mia were living like royalty. They spent their days swimming in our private infinity pool, ordering whatever they wanted from our personal chef, and enjoying the absolute best view of the pristine Pacific Ocean. Every time Vanessa saw us from a distance, she looked completely miserable and deeply humbled. Her days of arrogant smirks over. Standing my ground didn't just give my kids an unforgettable vacation, it taught me that I am strong enough to protect them from anyone's cruelty. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you have done if you were in my place?